dares to enter the mayhem? Kai Kisk. So bad guy.
Shotos are the premier archetype of fighting games, being the design of some of the genre's most iconic characters, and an instantly recognizable toolkit for anyone that's ever played a fighting game. Fireball, DP, forward advancing move with some kind of way to beat projectiles. So, you may be wondering, what does this have to do with the Good Doctor? No, not that one. This one. Well, hold on, stay with me here. I've got an idea. And if by the end of this I haven't convinced you, I give up. I wasted years getting a qualification in game design, I guess. But I'm going to try and convince you that despite his looks, despite what he is called in League, a tank juggernaut, dumb idiot thing that damages towers by headbutting it, he is actually the perfect fit to inherit the Shoto archetype while still keeping his goofy charm alive through his animations and how he accomplishes things. And if you think I'm insane, it means I'm doing something right. In this video, I'm going to cover a general brief overview of who Mundo is, his design philosophy both in League and what I envision for it in 2XKO, and his moveset. But without further ado, let me present Dr. Mundo, 2XKO's Perfect Shoto. As far as lore goes, Mundo is a sort of tragic figure. He was mutated by several horrific experiments, and as a result, all of his traits were amplified several times over. His strength, his good intentions, and his obliviousness. Which turns his character into one dark, twisted comedy, where he believes he's doing the right thing, but he's just insane. But while his lore highlights the tragedy, his gameplay highlights the comedy.
Syringes, check. Bandages, check. Dr. Mundo, check. These hex-rays look fine. That's what me'd say if me took hex-rays. Mundo always say, malpractice make malperfect.
Regrets come to
Nurse, the anesthesia wore off.
touch me.
Why are you running? Why are you running?
Yes! Yes!
Montage aside, the most important takeaway from his in-game iteration is his abilities and how they're going to inform us on his characteristics and how he's going to play, as well as what sets him apart from the rest of the cast. So I've added a short breakdown of what each of Mundo's abilities do, to try and help inform how we're going to convert them from an ability in a MOBA into an ability in the fighting game. Starting things off from the beginning with his passive, Goes Where He Pleases. This ability blocks the first instance of crowd control against Mundo before dropping a Chemtech canister on the ground that Mundo will need to pick up if he wants to refresh the ability faster. This passive is not only a huge part of his kit, but also a huge part of his identity as a character, and will inform a lot of future decisions about how certain attacks are designed. Up next is Mundo's main active ability, his Q. This move in League acts as his main spacing control tool, allowing him to harass his opponents from afar or to slow their approach or escape. Mundo will typically deal most of his damage through this ability, with its good utility, damage, and short cooldown. Mundo's W is a pretty powerful sustain tool, but the part I want to discuss most is the characterization it gives him, most particularly in that very first line, a little throwaway, Dr. Mundo electrocutes himself. A little reference to his pre-rework form, in which he was a little bit more of a masochist. Probably still is, but it's just not as open. We'll circle back to why this is important later when we cover his theoretical move list. Mundo's E enhances his very next attack to have more damage and an additional property, that if it kills a small creature, it sends it flying. damaging everything hiding behind it. There's not much to discuss with this ability, but it does have a lot of flexibility behind it, so we can be creative with how we apply it to his moveset. And last but certainly not least, his ultimate, where he overcharges himself with chemicals, causing him to gain extreme health regeneration. This one ability is probably the reason you hate him. Now, that's the end of the League of Legends reference, alright? That's all we're going to reference from his League of Legends counterpart. Now we're getting into the fighting game references. Why this kit, why his League of Legends kit, can be turned into a Shoto moveset. Starting things off with the most recognizable Shoto of all, Ryu. Now, I'm not going to cover the main Shoto aspects of Ryu, but instead I want to talk about his Street Fighter 6 iteration and a new move that it added, the Denjin Charge, or whatever it's called, lightning power up, make fireball better. Regardless of details, I think it's a mechanic or a move that would suit Mundo's moveset very well. Whether it's actual electrical power or the current idea I have in my head, where he gives himself an extra dose of Chemtech juice, enhancing his next special as a result. Next character isn't actually a Shoto, and instead will inform most of the animations that we go behind, because we still want this sense of power to come from Mundo. Despite, you know, the careful controlled moveset in theory, the way that he appears still needs to have a sense of power and character. It's to this end that I'd like to reference and outline the recklessness that Kanji shows in a lot of his animations and the general power behind things. Because Kanji is depicted as a tough character, he shocks himself for his universal break DP mechanic. I'm gonna call it a DP, alright? It's technically not what it's called, but you know, I'm gonna lie. And I think that goes along very well with Mundo and his character. Because not only in his W does he electrocute himself, it goes along with the mild masochism and the just general toughness depicted in the character. The second part that I want to reference is Kanji's chair toss super. The way that he just throws and heaves his body into it gives the chair a tangible sense of weight and damage. And I think it's something that, it's a tough balance to strike, especially with the character as like visually buff and strong as Mundo. You don't want him to look like he's struggling, but at the same time, the same like reckless, like full body swings that he can do also depicts like the lack of practice, the insanity, and just how hard that move would hit. And now, the last reference, I'm going to try and reference other characters in 2XKO. More specifically, for this example, I'll highlight Braum and Darius. With Darius in particular being a larger body with a more Shoto-esque moveset. Typically, for 2XKO movesets, I see the S2 specials being the one that interact with each character's unique mechanic more than the S1. For this, I'd reference Braum's Unbreakable and Darius's Bleed, all being S2 associated, with the S1 still being a large part of their kit, just not so much a unique mechanic. This has led me to base Mundo's theoretical moveset between a separation between the S1 specials taking on more physical aspects and using his cleaver and medical bag, and his S2s utilizing his Chemtech and all the traits associated with that. Also, as a side note, when discussing the actual moveset, I'm going to be using numpad notation, because it's what I'm comfortable talking in. So if you don't know what that is, here's an image.
Sometimes me wonder, who is me to play God? Then me remember, me Mundo.
Mundo's 2XKO design is going to follow one core philosophy. A Chemtech-fueled Mundo goes where he pleases. As Darius already occupies the Shoto slot in the roster, if we want to give Mundo a similar Shoto-ish playstyle, we need to make him stand apart through his mechanics. To emphasize these differences, I'm going to start by talking about his S2. Just thought up this name, 20 cc's of Chemtech. The medical puns write themselves. This move is going to be his 5 or neutral S2, and it's going to act pretty much like Denjin Charge. He injects himself with Chemtech and empowers his next move, granting either additional properties or just a flat damage increase. This move will be the main crux of his kit. This is where his whole game plan revolves around. When he zones you, it's to try and create space to give him enough time to inject himself with Chemtech. On knockdown, you have a choice, Chemtech or Oki. As such, when I talk about future special moves, I'm going to mention their base and enhanced version. I suppose another example that I could have talked about is it's like Hakan's Oil from Street Fighter 4. His next S2 special is his down or 2S2, which will reference his W from League and also act as his sort of DP, where he grabs his defibrillator and just shocks himself, in which the move has two possible avenues that it could go. It could either use armor, or like the kanji referenced before, where if the opponent hits it, they try and hit it, they'll get zapped, unless it's a projectile, in which case projectile just gets destroyed. Both of which play into Mundo's character of the masochism and also just the willingness to be hit. Whether he armors through the blow or hitting him is what causes you to get shocked, because he doesn't care that he's getting electrocuted. You do. The enhanced version can either deal more damage or heal a portion of his health on hit. Now, you don't want the reward for this to be too high, because having a defensive option like this is already insanely strong. So we're going to keep all the classic weaknesses, insanely minus on block, long recovery, the works. Switching over to his S1 specials, we're going to look at his first S1. Neutral S1, 5S1. The classic Cleaver Throw. Pretty standard fireball, projectile, we know how it works. Animation-wise, you know, he's got his cleaver in hand, he throws it, and then he just replenishes it by pulling it out of his medical bag. Makes the startup and recovery pretty clear, and it accomplishes its job. Enhanced version, more damage, better frame data on hit and block. This move's going to be the cornerstone of his neutral, especially when he's trying to keep you out and create space, so that he can reapply his Chemtech boost. This next move I have a couple ideas for. It's the forward advancing projectile invuln, right? It's going to be either forward S1 or forward S2, which is going to change like how the move is themed a little bit, right? If it's S1, he's going to use his medical bag to swing around him and hit the opponent. I also have the idea that it probably wall bounces on hit, so it's going to have a bit slower of a startup, but it's still going to beat those projectiles. Think of it like Braum's Charge S2. Whole time, it's projectile invuln, and it'll smack you, but if you hit him with something physical, counter hit stops him. Second idea, forward S2, it's just based off of his walk and his passive, right? So it's a mixture of the two, where he walks forward, his little like saunter walk that he has, and that whole time he's just projectile invuln. It's like Warwick holding down S1, charges forward, projectile invuln the whole time, except it's got the little Mundo pep step flavoring. In my mind, the S1 idea kind of completes his kit a little bit more. It's another attack, it gives him a wall bounce, combo utility, all kinds of stuff, right? It's a lot more open. S2, I like it thematically, but I don't know how it synergizes with the rest of his kit. So I'm just going to keep the S1 idea. I'm going to build off of that one. Pretty much enhanced state, I think it should have like, I don't know, one hit of armor. Or, if you don't want the base version to wall bounce, this one wall bounces. I have a couple, like, radical ideas about, like, his health. Different abilities are going to play into it, because I have mentioned, like, healing off of grey health while he's active, and how that's going to play into his health without making rounds last too long, or, like, too campy a playstyle, and how you balance healing, especially with a character that his ultimate is healing. It is a huge part of his identity. And it's to that end that I'm not sure if they can do this. But if they give him average health, could they also tweak how much damage is converted into grey health for him specifically? So that he generates more grey health than another character, but has a lower general health pool. Making it so in a game as high damage as 2XKO, if he does get caught, he takes a lot of damage. And he still has opportunities. If he gets out with the right defensive read, with the right options, he has the ability to make that comeback and get back and still play his game comfortably. Still be, like, happy going in enough that it doesn't promote only running away. Now, the reason why I brought up that little bit first before I talk about supers is because I have an idea that his S2 super is a healing over time super that heals his grey health. Doesn't increase his health total, because that's lame. Like Echo's Time Winder. What? Actually, hold on. Speaking of that idea, I've just had an idea. If we want to scrap the healing super idea, right, and save it maybe for the ultimate, right? He heals off the ultimate. Warwick already does that. Maybe he can too, right? We can do it so that he has an install that has him for a period of time have every special be Chemtech powered. Now that I think about it, that's probably a much safer bet, much less frustrating, much less hard to code, or probably, in theory, and plays against that campy playstyle as well, just because it's buffing him in general, which makes it easier for you to get in, deal that damage. So it's encouraging offense rather than, oh wait, I need a heal. And it also gives him the option to trade meter for his win condition, or like his optimal state. You don't need the same time that you need regularly with normal S2 to inject the Chemtech and go into that state. For a meter, you are just in that state. S1 super, hack slash, exact animation, I don't have in my head at the moment. But it could be a lot of things. He could set his raccoon nurse on you. Yes, his nurse is a raccoon. It's awesome. He could do a grab. It could be a command grab super. You know, mild damage, and it's just like, grab him, hack him. Regardless, this one's going to be like the damage super. The combo ender, you know it. It'll be the damage super, and it can do one of two things in my mind is what it should do. It should either get him in with like a shoulder charge or something, or it's going to hit up close because we're trying to encourage them to go in because we don't want the game to go slow. But hey, feel free to tell me how you think it should work. Whoa, hey. Double editing Medri here. I realize this section became very rambly and fast-paced, so I'm going to do a short review, as well as cover a couple things that I missed in the initial recording, like the air special buttons, and the theming of his lights, mediums, and heavies, because I somehow forgot those. The ultimate's coming up after this, though, the level 3. That's next. Okay, so the quick recap of what we've discussed thus far. Neutral S1 is Cleaver Throw. That's your Fireball replacement. We got that. Next, Forward S1. Your pretty much spinning Tornado Kick, Tatsumaki, whatever it's called. Those are your two grounded S1 specials. Then you have two S2 specials. The neutral S2 being the core of your kit. It's your Chemtech charge. Make whatever medical joke you want there, right? And then his down S2, his DP, where he shocks himself and it hurts. Okay, so that's the end of that recap. Now to actually talk about the air specials. For some reason, I have in my mind that he does like a flying body press, and it's just called CPR, because he's doing CPR, but it's him falling on top of you and crushing you. That would be the Air S1. Now, for the Air S2, a part of me wants to say Blanca Ball. You know, have him go down sort of like a dive kick, but he's electrified. I'm kind of stumped. Like, we could turn the Air S1 into the Air S2 and just use the defibrillator there, and instead make one of his ground S1s Air OK. Like, have him swing his medical bag downwards in a dunking motion, and they just, like, ground bounce or something. Look, all I'm gonna say is I've made this, like, much harder for myself. Champion's not meant to be designed by one person. Making characters is hard, especially for a fighting game. With all that out of the way, I think it's pretty clear what his assists are going to be. One of them, Cleaver Throw, that's going to be his back assist, because his neutral assist is going to be his other S1, the giant forward medical bag swing. Slower assist, but it's going to have good block stun, and even provide a wall bounce. So once you get that timing down, huge reward. And finally, last little amendment, lights, mediums, and heavies are going to use his different medical tools. His lights, I'm thinking he's going to be able to use his clipboard a little bit. Have a little bit of levity in there. It's fun. Think Phoenix Wright, UMVC3. In his medium, he's going to start to incorporate his cleaver. Huge part of his identity, huge part of his kit. Your mediums are generally your most used button, so it'll be fairly prevalent there. And his heavies, going to use his medical bag. Maybe even his bone sword too. Not super sold on that one at the moment, but medical bag mainly. And with that, that's the recap pretty much done. Moving on to the ultimate. The penultimate ability. Quite literally, the ultimate. With his S2 special sort of acting like his League of Legends ultimate, at least visually, I think we can take a little bit of creative liberty with the level 3. You know, the cinematic component of it all, and especially the contrast to the rest of his gameplay, where he's going to be pretty goofy throughout the rest of it. The level 3, that's where the switch flips. Tonally, there's no more lamp shading about, like, the dark medical humor. Super starts, Mundo throws his cleaver as hard as he can. When it hits you, you fall to the ground. Camera switches to first-person perspective. You're dragging yourself across the floor. You can see your hands going in front of you as your vision starts to blur. Then, thunk, out of your back, you can hear the cleaver being pulled out as Mundo flips you over and says, "It's okay, I'm going to save you." As he brings the cleaver down directly over the camera, the last thing you hear, the final deep thud of the cleaver finishing you off straight to the head. Dr. Mundo smiling all the while. And that is how Dr. Mundo should be in 2XKO. So anyway, his grab animation is just going to be him hitting the tower. Except instead of the tower, it's you and your face.